All right, and let's check the chat window.
Okay, oh, you know what? I think I stopped Edwin's video display. I don't think, yeah, I stopped his video display. I didn't stop his screen sharing.
Okay.
So Edwin, sorry, I turned off your video, so you can restart your video if you like. It's just your screen recording.
I click on stop show or stop share. So
Okay, all right, that's got it. But I turned off I also turned off your video, so you can turn your video back on if you like.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. All right, I think I got the recording going. And I can't believe it. Okay, well, this time the responsibility is shared because I told you when we get starting, I have trouble remembering. So we are on to our next person. Who do we have? Would anyone like to volunteer by unmuting themselves and speaking up? I see Bill or Bruce or Galia or
I just put a question in the chat, and it kind of falls in line with what my question was. I start playing with the AI and importing AI templates, the pre-made AI templates into WordPress, and then I started using Elementor to try and play with it, and it seems like it all just fell off the rails. So I'm just wondering, is there any best practices, or have you guys played around with doing things like that?
Well, speaking just for myself, no, I haven't done anything so far in terms of using a ChatGPT with WordPress directly, although I know that just about everybody of any consequence is working on multiple projects to do that. And I think the only guidance I can offer as a result is that the reputation of the developer is really the most important thing at this stage in terms of deciding whether to invest the time for a given plugin or service, that your time will be well invested because they'll be around 6 months from now with some product or service that you can continue to use. I think that, again, it's obviously just my personal opinion, is that at this stage of things in WordPress, there are a lot of people experimenting and nobody really does know much. But Elementor, for example, which has AI built into some of its stuff, or Cadence, which has also brought AI into its plugins, they have reputations as quality developers. Obviously, Elementor being the biggest page builder must be. So they're pretty trustworthy. And what time you spend on them should be returned with their amount of effort investment in AI, right? Unless does anybody else have a comment to make? Because I have a second point, but I'll hold it until other people speak up.
Can I briefly share my screen?
Sure.
Okay. Share that one. You got them out on the screen?
We're not seeing it.
Yeah. Oh, have to press another button. You got it. It's sharing?
Yeah, we see it now.
Okay, this doesn't look much different. You mentioned Elementor, and this is an Elementor page. And what it's got on it is something that automatically pops up links and shows what's behind them. And it's written by a bunch called Links AI. And basically, so we've got two different organizations, both doing some AI. And this little gizmo basically just opens links. So when you hover over something, you see whatever link I've linked it to. And
Mike, what is the AI contribution to this exercise?
At this point, I don't really care because I'm using the AI that's being provided by Elementor and by Links AI.
Okay, because
to get really quick stuff on my screen. And
the feature that you just displayed is, for example, pretty much a standard browser feature, previewing links, right? Like I know on Safari. Yeah. Anytime you click and hold a link, up pops the same window with
Yeah. Oh,
the title
absolutely.
and background and image and the rest. It's
Yeah.
really it's a version of the page itself, right?
Of
But
somebody
Robin,
else's
if you
page.
want to sell anything now, you have to call it AI.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess I was indirectly saying that
Yeah.
don't take for granted that if they say AI, it is actually doing
That is
anything
AI. No, but I'm
in the instance or aspect that you're looking at directly.
In my case, I was using it was really a page builder, and it inserted text, it inserted the images, it formatted everything. It built quite an elaborate page. Now there's some things I didn't like about it, so when I dropped it into WordPress and then started trying to play with it with Elementor, that's where I couldn't do much with that template now under the Elementor tools, right? So I was just curious if anyone has a workaround, or if I should just scrap that experiment altogether.
Is this the 10 web AI system you're using?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Is it the 10 web's AI system? Because I know that 10 web has integrated Elementor and an AI system, and what it does is it takes a snapshot of a website and builds you a duplicate of that website in Elementor. Just wondering if that's the system you're using. You would go to 10web.com to do it.
Yeah, it wasn't 10 web. Sorry, I
Okay.
wrote it down. I'm trying to find that in my notes and I can't find it for some reason, but I did played with probably 5 or 6 of them, and they're mostly well-known organizations, well-known companies that had put their beta AI page builders up. The one that I found in Elementor, it didn't do as much as some of these other ones have done so far anyway. So that's why I thought I would plunk it in and see if I could play with it, because I'm paying for Elementor anyway. So
Yes, I think that this is the second point, goes to the second point that I was going to make, and that is that we started off with ChatGPT with this whole notion of prompt engineering, right? That it was the way in which you sort of ask questions to elicit information that was really the key. Well, we progressed way beyond that, because that's actually fairly difficult to do and requires a certain amount of subject matter knowledge that many potential users wouldn't have. So now this notion of templating comes into play, or blueprinting, or building something which has in effect the prompts built in already, and they're sort of below the surface so that you don't have to pay any attention to them. They're there at work. And I was looking at a quite sophisticated scheme to produce copywriting in a couple dozen different flavors, which is, say, copywriting for different purposes, like a direct mail piece versus an email versus an invitation. Might be 3 different pieces of copy, but arise out of the same process of generation. So what these fellows have done is analyzed all the best examples they have of these different kinds of marketing vehicles, built a ChatGPT powered template sort of process that in effect does the prompting for you, but in the background entirely.
Right.
And then it's like a little program that you just run, and out comes the result. And that can be quite sophisticated, but remember that in this particular case, that sophistication is because the task, generate text, is rather different than the layout of a page or the selection of appropriate image. Those are things which, in the context, if you understand the way generative AI works, just the most basic stuff, right? The basic notion is that the AI engine is trying to complete a phrase or a sentence or a word combination. And to do that statistically, it finds out what's the most likely thing to be said next, or to be written next, or to be added next. Let's do that. So it can be quite sensible in some cases. And then in other cases have this effect, which they call hallucinations, in which it's just making stuff up. And you, if you don't know what you're doing with the subject matter, you would have difficulty telling that this was just made up stuff because it would sound just as good as the real stuff. So there's this complexity to it that so the context you're talking about, page layout, site design, organization of content on a page is a frontier of AI that's still not only brand new, but like very hazardous brand new. That is to say, whatever is offered today may be something quite different next week because it's experimental.
And that's
and more
exactly
power to Elementor for putting its stuff together. But I think they probably warn you pretty seriously. Don't do this. Don't become dependent on this because we can't support it in the same level as other features in the product. But I do commend you for giving this a whirl at this early stage because it's more of a hobbyist interest, I think, on your part than, hey, I really need this tool to work for me. I tried, for example, using ChatGPT 4 to produce content within a particular topic category, and it was pretty decent stuff. But I found that with WordPress related questions that I've tried, or technology ones like, say, a new Mac model that's being introduced, if you know the subject matter pretty well, go ahead, because you can see when something's nutty or doesn't make sense, right? But if it's a layout of something, how will you know if it's a little out of whack or it's causing a problem, somewhere that you have to debug and figure out? That's an issue, I think, that's a little different in this context, where
at the moment you have to treat using AI like hiring an intern. It requires a lot of supervision.
And a bit of a black box aspect to it as well, because it can't explain itself. It's lucky if it can just cite where it's getting the material from.
Robin,
appreciate the feedback.
What I was trying to get across is I selected an AI unit that would do something very quickly and would solve all my links and loads and all this other stuff without me having to go into the details of why it liked one website or another, which is a task I'm quite happy to unload. I recently went on to somebody else's chatbot, and it actually confused centimeters and meters and told me that, the moon was like your arm's length away because it didn't understand the metric system. And that's the kind of thing where I would be terrified to put that on a website if I was doing commerce and find out I just sold my entire inventory for $10 because it didn't understand the difference between 1 million and 10 when you went into the AI. But
in some cases, if you think of AI as the idiot savant, the someone who is brilliant in some respects and a complete idiot in most other in everything else in life but this narrow area. And so it's extremely important, as Drew was saying, it's extremely important to supervise as well as to understand what exactly is it that I want this to do and how will I defend against the limitations we're now quite well aware of that exist in all these products. So I think the answer is, well, just use it in areas where it's not important that everything be exactly right, and that if something goes wrong, it's a relatively trivial, sort of thing to recover from, whether it's the site or the user. Or you carefully test it, and when you're done testing, you say, hey, it got 10 out of 10 for these, examples or experiments. So I'm willing to sort of put my life on the line as a result. All right. Anything further anybody wants to add on this particular topic? Thanks for the comment, though, Mike.
So Bill Haflidson had put a question in the chat about a downloadable product.
Hey, yeah. So can you hear me?
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I have a free product, but I make a little bit of money when people come to my site and they click on an ad. So I want people to come to my page. But after a while, Google figures out that people are going to the product. And then, so when they search for my website, this product comes up. but I don't want them to go straight to the product. I want them to go through my page. Is there a way for me to hide that link or that page? It's a e-learning program, and I upload it to WordPress.
That's interesting.
Do
So
you
when
have-
Google does a search report that has your site in it because of the keywords,
Yeah,
you're saying that the information provided is not what you want because it's specific to a product, where you want the page because there are other products potentially there that a person will click on. Is that a fair statement?
yeah. So again, if you again, you guys can do it. If you type in AIX safety, that's my website. You'll come up to my website, but the third or fourth, I guess, line down will be the product. And I don't want people to be able to go to the product. I want them just to go straight to my website.
Yes, but so we're trying to figure out how to control what Google reports with respect to your site in a listing of sites in a search engine report, right?
Yeah.
Robin, that page I showed you a few minutes ago.
Yep.
I think you'll find it does exactly what the guy wants it to do.
So
You click on the search.
Yeah, could you just explain that a bit more? Show us the
Yeah,
page again
okay.
and then explain it to Bill.
Okay. Basically, where to go? Find free. What? This is my page, right? Is it shared?
Not yet.
There's screen, click. There we go. When you highlight something, you see the through link, right?
Oh, in other words, you're saying that because it only has the details of the link after you hover over it,
Exactly.
click it or whatever, then in Bill's case, until somebody hovered over it, they wouldn't have the product name and details.
That's exactly the point.
What about a picture, even an image representation of the
Well,
product? Wouldn't that do the same job too?
Well, yeah, but this basically means that I can store the link anywhere.
Right. No,
Wow.
I appreciate that. I'm just saying though that as a
Soft
separate point,
Yeah.
if you replace the text with an image, then what would Google do? It wouldn't display. I don't think it would try to display the image.
I think the
Well,
moment
the question I'm asking is quite a bit different. It's not on my page. It's when people do a search. I want to be able to hide a page, or it's not, Google lists
Okay,
that
but
as a page.
we're assuming that
Yeah.
Google's listing your page in a search engine report, right? Because of keywords.
Right.
And so the
underneath-
question is how to influence or control what Google displays about that link. And so what Mike is saying is that in his case, because the information is so limited as to what's behind that link, that he's suggesting, well, that may be a technique to hide the information from Google, so it can't put that into the report, number one. Number two, my thought was, well, what if that was an image rather than the product link and details? Wouldn't that solve the problem too? Bill?
Yeah, I don't think
I
so.
mean, it's a pain, but unless
So what people do,
Google offers a way,
yeah,
let's see, control.
I could show you. Maybe that might be easier.
So,
Can
Bill,
share
when
my-
I do a Google search for AIX safety,
Yeah,
your site comes up as the first match,
yeah,
and it gives me a breakdown of four or five things on your site,
exactly.
and the first one being free WMIS 2015 training. Is
Yeah,
that
so the third one down is the product, the WMIS AIX Safety V20.
Okay, yeah. Is that,
Yeah,
and
So
that's
people
not,
can go directly to the product and get the product, but I don't want them to go directly to the product. I want them to go through my page. Yeah,
well, what
Wait a
if,
second, this I'm not understanding. Could we see the page, please?
yeah. You want to
oh,
do
I
it?
see.
You
Oh,
want to
okay.
do it, Drew? So you might be too.
Yeah, I see that what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
So
Okay, explain to me then, Drew.
All right, so what the
Can you show your screen, Drew, maybe, perhaps?
yeah, let's see.
Kevin, Kevin Hunt, rather, did you want to
Uh,
pipe up something here? I see you got your hand raised.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. If I understand Bill's question, you want to hide that particular page, that VMS version 21 stored HTML from Google to index it, right? You don't want it to show up in the Google results, right?
Yeah, I tried the robot text. That doesn't exactly work.
Yeah, I'm confused. Can we see the page, Bill?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen now.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So
Drew.
do you see my screen?
No.
I just
No, not yet.
oh, sorry, I didn't click share. Okay. All right. So are you guys seeing
Yeah. I
a
can see
Now we're
Google.
seeing the search engine report,
Okay,
right?
yeah, good. Yeah, so you're seeing a Google search for what I'm training. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the third link down here, which is the WMS AIX Safety V20,
Yeah.
and you will see that it goes straight to a video presentation, or it goes to I don't know if it's a video or a slideshow presentation. And I guess that is what Bill does not want to happen.
Right, because it doesn't give any opportunity to see the other products, right, Bill?
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to just stop sharing the screen now. So that sort of illustrates what the issue is.
Mhm.
So actually, the problem is that Google's doing too much for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Where'd you go?
Well, basically what I do is I
Yeah.
change the link for that page every couple months, but then it shows up again. But
Yeah, Google's good at finding stuff. That's what
Yeah.
What
it
was the
does.
URL again, guys? What was the URL?
If you do a Google search for AIX safety, he'll find it.
Yeah, safety.
Yeah. Robin, you asked if using an image would have been the same as what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was looking at my source code, and basically the source code you're seeing on the screen has no connection whatsoever to the web page that's connected to it. Whereas if you just put an image there with a link behind it, I believe it would show in the show source, and the
Interesting.
Google would have access.
Now, just by the by, Drew, I'm looking at this Google page, and mine's a little different. Doesn't have the subheads that you had.
Interesting.
Interesting. Let me just show you. Right. I think this is what Bill wants.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now I searched AIX safety as
If you go
one
further
word.
down though, go further down. Yeah, see the V20, that's the one I don't want to show. Yeah.
Robin, try Google searching AIX safety as one word. Just take the space out.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that an interesting distinction, though?
Yeah.
I mean, that's small. I mean, they found the right site, the right page.
You
Right.
can see why the SEO people obsess over stuff like this.
So have you researched this question online, Bill, to see?
I've tried the robot text, I've tried different things, and yeah, I haven't had found an answer. The only workaround I have is change that link every month or two.
What about just going into WordPress and for that page, specifying the hide from search engines option in there.
Yeah, the problem is it's not really a page, it's that program that we saw earlier, right? And it is an HTML document, but I can't add anything to the header or anything like that. Right?
And you've tried excluding it using robots.txt.
Yeah, I tried that.
It's funny that Google didn't respect that, because it usually does.
But that may be true because that it's being applied. It's not being applied to the page in question, the specific page. It's to the internal components of the page, right? And I'm not sure if robot.txt actually was ever intended to address that.
Well, you can tell it to exclude a certain page or a certain section of your site.
Right, but can you do a section of a page?
A section of a page, no. You can do
Yeah, because I think that's
whole
what
page.
Bill's talking about now, is that he wants to suppress or make non-indexable some part of a page.
Well, it's a specific URL that he wants excluded, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
and that's
And it's not really a page. So
well, it is an HTML file, so
Yeah.
it's a page in that respect.
it is, but
Even if
I'm
it's just a shell.
Yeah, it's produced by a program called Articulate Storyline. And I don't really know how to mess with the code or change the headers.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to mess with the code in particular, but
Yeah.
if you put that explicit URL in your robots.txt under exclude, Google should respect that.
Yeah, I think the problem is that other people link to it too, but anyway, yeah. Okay, that's one.
Well, can you tell from the search engine data that Google produces, confirm this point that that when you have it on the robot.txt exclusion, that it is these third-party inbound links that are triggering the problem. That would be worth confirming.
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah.
But I mean, you could find out, right?
Yeah.
Just by seeing where the traffic's coming from.
Mhm.
Like, is it internal traffic or external traffic?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that really helps all that much, but it would simply be another sort of item of information to take into account.
Yeah.
You know, one thing you could do is you could hide this behind a form and ask people to ask people to do something like enter their email address and click a form to get it to pop up, and treat it like a lead magnet. The same way that people collect leads. In fact, this would be probably a very good thing for that, because obviously it's something that people want and the people are interested in. So it'd be a very good way to probably get qualified leads for your business if you put up a form that says enter your email address and get this this presentation.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah. Because then I guess the form, it would be, as you say, it would be kind of hidden, we hope.
Yeah, and you can put it in a hidden section of your site.
Yeah.
Well, and perhaps another way to go about this is to experiment. And I know you said that the video file and page is generated by a plugin or a program or service.
Mhm.
I wonder if instead of going to a video as we just saw it displayed, if you used a pop-up, then that would be something that Google wouldn't process in the same way, because it's not, in a sense, leaving the page to go somewhere, but rather staying on the same page and just, like providing like a widget would sitting on a page. It does some specific thing, and when it's done, it's finished. Google wouldn't normally index widgets in terms of what they're doing. So it might be something just to check into as to whether or not pop-ups would work differently than the way that this particular thing has been implemented in your case.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's an idea too. I could make it an iframe, right? Would that help?
Now, an iframe has the advantage of perhaps working better with the robots file, right? Because you do have a regular URL to work with that comes into the page, but doesn't, I mean, technically it's not in the page. I guess it is in the page all the time, isn't it? It's not brought in. It's brought into the page in the process of publishing, but when it's displayed, it's there, right? Actually, that shouldn't be hard to experiment with. Just add something very small in the way of an iframe with a product and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think Google might have trouble indexing stuff in an iframe. Keep in mind, though, that Google is getting better all the time. So,
Yeah.
it might work today, it might not work tomorrow.
However, if it did work today, that would be better than to bill it, perhaps. That'd be good enough. Would be better than nothing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for your help.
Okay.
All right.
And now Kevin Hunt has a question about an SSL certificate.
Yeah. Also, just Bill, if you haven't already like connected your website with the Google Webmaster tools, that might be another way of trying to hide the actual content of that page there manually if Robots.txt isn't working. So you might be able to try that as well. I've had to do that before for other things. But yeah, so
Wait a second. Bill, did you understand that?
So yeah, so I have analytics and I have ads and I haven't tried the webmaster tools.
that one should help you because it will
Yeah.
show you all the pages that are indexed and like the actual health of the indexing. And you should be able to manually exclude stuff from being indexed that way. There's usually a little thing you'll have to install a little file on your website so it knows it's you. But yeah.
Okay, I'll try that. Thank you.
That's an excellent suggestion, Kevin.
No
What was your
problem.
question,
So
Kevin?
yeah, no problem. Yeah, the issue I'm having, it's more than SSL cert. I migrated my WordPress instance over from like just a HostGator VPS and over to an EC3 instance. Then I created the SSL certificates. I pointed them to what I thought was the right CNAME records, but I still keep getting certificate invalid issues. It keeps saying it belongs to example.com. I was wondering if anyone had any idea what might be wrong there. I realize this might be more of an IT question than a WordPress question, but I was just hoping and praying I can't find anything.
Yeah, does Amazon do its own service for issuing SSL certificates? I'm not really familiar with using EC3.
Yeah, they do. They have a way to like create the signed certificates, set it all up, and it just gives you exactly the strings you need for the names and the values. And so I went through and I did all that, and I put them in through like my the registrar for my URLs to update the CNAME records. And from the Amazon side, it says that the certificates are verified. But then whenever I go to like any of my WordPress websites, the HTTPS gives me an error saying it's insecure and it's got a self-signed certificate. So it's still somehow pointing to the wrong certificate, and I can't figure out why.
When did you make the change?
I migrated over like a month ago, and I got the
Oh, okay.
certs put together like about a week ago, and so it's like it should have been more than enough time for me to propagate.
Yeah.
The domain registrar that I use for domain names that I control, there's a verification process that enables you to check that the DNS change has gone into effect and is working properly, right? Is that what you were referring to earlier, that Amazon says it's working, but the EC3 is generating this error message?
Yeah, so yeah, Amazon has their thing where they check to make sure that the certificates are verified. And so it says on the Amazon side, it's everything's fine. As near as I can tell on the network solutions, which has my the URLs or like the domain names, they say everything's fine. But then when I actually go to the website, it's still somehow pointing to the wrong certificate.
Can you put a sample site into the chat and we can have a look?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I am running a check using a website called whynopadlock.com, and it diagnoses SSL problems. And it's yeah, so it's basically telling us what you already told us. That it's for some reason it's not the certificate is not pointing to your domain. And
Does
you're,
anyone know, like, is there a way to find out where that certificate is coming from? Like, if I at least knew the location of it, I could narrow down, or like if it's coming from HostGator by a domain registrar, or it's coming from Amazon somewhere. There's an old cert.
well, the fact that it seems to be pointing to example.com suggests that it's using a default value. That it somehow hasn't registered, it hasn't got the domain name value in it at all.
Kevin, were you saying just a moment ago that you weren't sure who the supplier of the certificate was? Was that what you were saying?
Well, this one that's showing up. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where this
Because
example.com.
the certificate's details, like when you check a certificate, right? Like you, for example, in FTP, happens all the time. When you go to the site and there's some bug or issue with the certificate, then displays all the internal details, which number, I don't know, at least 24 different items about that certificate. And I've never needed to know sort of where it came from, but it has things like issuance date, expiry date, you know, and so on. So for example, if you go to the site and I'm just trying to think now, what was the one that
You know,
just
I'm wondering if this certificate was actually generated for example.com rather than being when it was generated, it wasn't actually generated for your domain name.
you mean in the EC3 process?
Well, wherever the certificate was generated, I suspect that it may have actually been generated just using the default domain name value, rather than being generated for the domain in question, which is Kevin James Hunt.com. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking there was a problem in the actual generation of the certificate itself.
So you're saying in the course of setting up the EC3 account, the certificate came up in that process?
In fact, there are some serious problems with this certificate, because under the SSL certificate info, I'm getting issuer not listed. So this is a seriously messed up certificate. Kevin, where did you get this from?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So the fact that it was 1109, I'm seeing it now, issued on 1109, that would have been when I first spun up the instance. So it must have been like a default one created, like you said, example.com. It was just something that was just put in when I loaded up the image and kicked things off.
Yeah, so you probably want to go back into their certificate generator and specifically look at oh,
Well,
you
make
know
sure.
what? And they even might be doing self-signed certificates.
Wouldn't you expect AWS of all the companies to be providing their own certificates? They don't cost anything, right? And it does such a huge volume, and it would make things less buggy for them with their customers if they were supplying it. My experience is that the SSL normally comes from the hosting provider, and so therefore in the sequence of steps, Kevin, in the EC3 setup process, did you provide the domain name, or I guess early enough in the process to then be caught by the steps in which the certificate is generated?
Yeah, so this in fact is a self-signed certificate. So yeah, so the problem is in the certificate generation itself. So you probably want to go back to Amazon and make sure that you're getting a certificate from a legitimate certificate authority. Now I don't know whether they use Let's Encrypt or not, because but that's really popular. There are a few annoying web hosts that actually make you pay for SSL certificates. As I said, I haven't used EC3, but yeah, so you do need to regenerate this certificate using an actual certificate, a certificate authority, and Let's Encrypt is a good one, because it's free, and it's open source.
Okay.
I just
that makes
Googled
sense. So,
now, does AWS provide SSL certificate? And says
So that's-
use the AWS certificate manager to provision, manage, and deploy, blah, 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 with AWS services and internal connected resources. I'll give you just the.
so that's the part that I did, but I did that in December. And so this example.com one that was created in November when I first found out the instance, they don't actually show, that cert doesn't show up in my AWS certificate manager. So I think, like you were saying, it must have been created when the image was first set up, or was just a part of the image, but it doesn't show up in the certificate manager here on my end. So I think, like, how do I delete that cert if it's just sitting on my server somewhere? Where would I find that?
Wouldn't this be
Well,
a good question just to simply ask AWS support? Because that's
Fair.
something they would obviously know.
That's okay. I think that's what I'm gonna have to do. You're right.
yeah,
for sure.
I've actually found it under,
Well, the other thing is explain, in 3 or 4 sentences, the certificate that I'm using doesn't work, and it doesn't seem to be, have these normal, characteristics or aspects, like who issued it, the correct domain name, and so on. And then just say you'd like to have a new one generated with the correct domain name. What's the procedure, or will they do that for you?
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's definitely what I'll do then. I'll go through that.
Because oftentimes with things like domain name stuff, it's faster for them to actually do the thing than to give you the instruction for it. And I found that in some cases, the problem's solved even before the call's finished, because they know exactly which buttons to push.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, all right, that's exactly what I'll do. Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the help and the input. That's really great. Really, yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Come again, or come up and whatever. All right, so
Will do. Yeah, this is a great group. I'm so glad I found this.
Actually, if you think this has been worthwhile, which is what it sounds like, what I ask people to do is just to add a couple of sentences and a comment on today's Meetup page for this session, and just say, hey, I found this quite worthwhile. I encourage anybody, be fearless, ask your question. They don't bite you or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, will do.
We actually had our first seriously unhappy customer last month, and we haven't talked about that because I haven't brought it up and nobody else has. But the one particular fellow whose name escapes me at the moment was upset by the way our process worked, and so wrote a fairly caustic, and I'm not sure even what it was. It came through in the Meetup email, but when I went to look for the email or the comment or whatever, I couldn't find it anywhere. It looks like he deleted it as soon as he sent it, which is sort of a strange situation. Anyway, so another little kind of testimonial comment from Kevin. You're giving us a little bit of a hand there, and that would be appreciated.
For sure. Absolutely.
Galia, have you left? You said her chat thing says it's very late, and so I'm going to go. So Galia, have you taken off? Looks like it. Okay. How about Jacquie or Joe? If I you two have a request to make for assistance. Are either of you there?
All is good here.
All
Hey,
is
Joe.
good here. Thank you.
Shelby, ladies
Thank
first.
you.
No, I don't have a question. I'm just here gathering information.
Sure, and you're welcome to do that. And
Me
Great.
too.
and you
Me
too as
too,
well.
me too.
Hey,
Yeah.
well, I think we've been through our list for given 40 plus RSVPs. We've managed to. Drew, do you see anybody in this list that we haven't given an opportunity to?
As far as I know, everybody who's still here has been answered.
Wish we'd done a better job with was it Edwin at the beginning? But I just had difficulty understanding what he was saying sometimes.
Yeah.
So it can be repetitious when you try to play back. Edwin, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Yeah, that was a long session, but I hopefully some help. So at this point, let me see now. A new comment. Hopefully that's Kevin's. Any suggestion? Anybody got anything they want to bring up to discuss? We could talk for a moment about the process here if someone doesn't have a request to make right now. One of the things that came up last month was that sometimes our segments run too long and aren't fruitful, therefore, for all the people awaiting their turn. And so one of the things that I thought worthwhile to do, I think might have been Drew's suggestion or Mike's suggestion, is that at 15 minutes with a given person, we do a time check. How are we doing? Are we making progress? Are we just about finished? Should we continue, or is this useful or worthwhile to people awaiting their turn? And so the idea that I have is simply anybody can sort of raise their hand or say to me, time check, Robin. And that just means, hey, let's just pause for a moment and see where we're at. So I think that's something that we'll do consistently if we can. And that's why in Edwin's case, I was making the comment that, the time we were spending. But Edwin had 3 different points. So that might have been a special case. And then the other thing that was suggested, and has been suggested before, and that is that we collect information at the beginning of a segment with somebody so that the site, the hosting, the theme or plugin, if relevant, is all sort of ready for us at the beginning of the person's segment, rather than sort of coming out as we talk about the issue or problem itself. We haven't actually done that yet on anybody tonight, but it's a noble goal. And so perhaps we'll be more successful trying that next month. I hope.
Could I ask a general question?
Sure, fire away.
Hey, I think these days, I'm wondering if websites and email are becoming passe, as it were. It seems that email is so complicated and no one's answering that we there's so many ways not to hide things, like Google divides everything up into 3. Even this invitation today, I'd got so many emails from Meetup. I had changed and put them into promotions that I never look at, and I never look at social. And so it was only a fluke that I even got the email. And I'm wondering, wow, is all the emails that I send out ending up in people's promotions and nobody's seeing me? In my Google reports, I noticed that my website visits are down. Is everything going stale?
Well, we're in the attention economy, which means that the scarcest resource now is people's attention, and That's what everybody is after, your attention and everybody else's attention.
And,
More people are trying to
the
get it.
second aspect, Drew, on that is that attention for us as individuals is a limited resource, and it can get used up. It does normally get used up sort of to one extent or another every day. And so therefore it's not just competition for attention, but the fact that we recognize it implicitly that you're sort of burning something up that isn't endless in supply. So there's that point in particular, Joe, that competing for attention means ever sort of louder, more abrasive sort of promotional exercises are involved. I guess it's also the relationship between the value of the product or service being promoted and the techniques to promote it. That the sort of the smaller or lower the price or value of the thing in question that's being sold, generally the more sort of Wild West the promotional efforts tend to be. The higher the value of the product or the more sophisticated or complex it is, the more the reputation of the provider comes into play and therefore limits what they can say and do to promote it.
We're all competing against dancing cats on TikTok, and the cats are winning.
But the frustration with some of us, our small businesses, maybe 20 years ago in a Google search or any search, our companies would have been the first thing, or as in SEO, we'd be quite high. Now it seems that sponsored and larger advertising companies have come up so far that we're now in the 100th position. So it seems like I hopelessly get lost.
Well,
Do you have a newsletter?
I do have a newsletter that I send out via email.
Right, because I think that, I mean, just my own experience, newsletters are recommended strongly from a direct marketing point of view as practically the most effective way to reach people, because when you have their email address, then you could communicate. But then, as you're saying, that we're all personally inundated with these emails. So in my case, it's a question of deciding which are the newsletters that I'm actually going to scan for worthwhile stuff to then look at and read, as opposed to, no, I don't have time for this today, and I'll just save it, knowing that I can search for something or go and find it in the folder that I've created for that particular newsletter. I save all the newsletters that are worth reading. And so when I've been away for a few days, as was the case today, like 200 plus emails to go through, of which 50 or 60 would have been newsletters of some shape or description. But if I'm really interested in the product, then I do scan those newsletters. And so it's this value question that if you can put things of value, even just one single thing of value in each newsletter to a given recipient, then in this world and economy, that's actually pretty valuable.
Joe, does your business serve a local market?
No, we're mostly Eastern Canada, so Manitoba to the Atlantic.
Okay. Yeah,
Joe, are you using MailChimp or something?
No, I'm using MailChimp.
Okay, so MailChimp gives you about 4 shots against people's attention. You get to have the subject, then there's a little preview slot. And I always start mine with an executive summary. So the person basically in the preview, which has no images, right? And your mail client, there's no images. So you see those things, and then it says executive summary, right? And then I put typically 2 more lines there. And then I put a menu, which are links to the, so anybody who gets it, I have 3 shots of getting their attention. And if I get them to click to open the email, the first thing they see is the set of links. And you saw my page there where it just had those lines, and then you flash on them and they're there. So the newsletter works the same way. You flash over the menu and bang, you're down into the item you care about. You don't have to scroll. My subscriber list has grown from about 400 to over 1,000, that I have a danger of losing my free service.
Okay.
And so I figure, that's what's supposed to happen. But just using the simplest possible tools, which is those first half a dozen lines in MailChimp. And, sometimes they put a joke there, sometimes I'm dead serious. Sometimes, it's just a reminder of somebody about a date. But that's it, four lines, and it shows in the preview if I'm using Outlook or on a cell phone. That's the other thing, on a cell phone, that's also what you see.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Anyone else have a topic that they would like to bring up or something to offer by way of an opinion? Please speak up.
Quite a generic question. Is there anything new in WordPress that we should be looking at this month? I guess there's something changed or whatever.
Well, we're midway between version releases, right? The next one's March.
Yeah.
Which isn't too far away. So I guess we're 6 weeks. Yeah, 12 weeks. So right in the middle. Do you pay any attention to the Gutenberg plugin in terms of the sort of latest developments in WordPress, Mike?
No.
Because that comes out every 2 weeks, a new version of the plugin. Yeah. And the post, which they publish with each release of that plugin, is quite short. Like it's usually 1 page. And is kind of like a summary listing of sort of the new features or capabilities. I find that's useful simply to scan, to know what they think is important and are working on. And then if it gets into the release in the next cycle, which is the normal process, then I've already got a little bit of familiarity about it. And if it was something that I think is going to be important to me, then I'll be sort of ready for the release. Because I'm not too keen on using that plugin in normal work because it's experimental, right? And it's not settled. The quality of the blogs that WordPress.org puts out has really gone up in the last 2 or 3 years. They've also overhauled altogether the developer blog. I'm not even sure if they had one like 9 months ago. But this developer blog really gets into details about major features or capabilities that the core developers think is really important to let people know about and to understand. And so there'll be a deep dive, for example, on the query loop. And if you're stuck on something and you want to understand better the way the whole mechanism works, then that's a really good place to go and look at. Interestingly, we were talking about AI, and there was a segment in the Matt Mullenweg State of the Word annual address in December, where, if I recall correctly, he has put AI in the same context as he did JavaScript. When was that, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, when he said, learn JavaScript deeply. That's the next really big thing in WordPress. Which actually has turned out to be true because, of course, everything in Gutenberg has a JavaScript component, or at least JavaScript's a key aspect of it, as well as React and so on.
Yeah, but do you edit anyone else's JavaScript?
No, but what he's saying is, if you're in the, if you've been a PHP developer, then JavaScript is really something you got to learn. And to make that clear, they did well, I won't go into sort of what Word Automatic has done and the WordPress core guys, but going back to the earlier point, those blogs are really a useful way to keep sort of an eye on things without spending too much time. Like if you can spend 2 or 3 hours a month just checking in on those blogs, all of which are available as subscriptions, right? Yeah. And then only look at them when there's something relevant in a topic to you. What I do is I find that simply browsing or scanning gives me a bit of an idea about what's in them, so that if I have an issue, I have a starting point, or I have an idea. Or it's something that I hadn't heard about before and that it's news to me, but okay, so now I've heard it. If it becomes something relevant, I'll look into it more, but it's really, I think what you're really talking about is just kind of general keeping up with things. There was a post actually that Anne McCarthy put out that was, how do you keep track of what WordPress is up to? Here are a set of resources to look at. And so anything from Anne McCarthy, you'd have to consider gold-plated in terms of credibility. And so that particular post, which would turn up on an Anne McCarthy search, would either be in her Nomad blog or Make WordPress Core post, or those are probably the two areas that she most frequently publishes. But those sorts of things are quite helpful in understanding the changes, for example, in the WordPress handbook are pretty significant. So just even knowing that a new section on templates has been completed, a new section on editing has been completed, that's really something worthwhile knowing, right? Because they've done a much better job now in documenting things, although it's a hopelessly always running late process, right? I mean, most people want to get the code out as opposed to document the code that's being sent out. So they have the same problem everybody else does.
Oh, well. Okay, can I scare you before you go home for the night?
Sure.
Okay, my meeting before this was Toronto Police Services race-based statistics group,
Right.
which I got nominated for because I was the only person in the room that had ever done statistics. They're thinking of training their AI with their own statistics, and they think this will eliminate racism.
One of the most important AI issues is the extent to which people who work in AI give the AI sort of processes their own biases.
Yeah.
One of the standing sort of jokes in the AI community for quite a while was the fact that one of the big Google AI projects just simply couldn't tell a gorilla from a black person, and that it was horribly embarrassing because anybody who tried it out could see that it couldn't make the distinction. And they couldn't technically figure out how to fix that in months of trying. So they just had to withdraw that particular offering.
Mike, you
Because they
need
just-
to explain to them one of the oldest principles in computer science is garbage in, garbage out.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, these guys have guns. There was a story out last week that one of the AIs confused a black man with a Hispanic woman. And I understand skin tone's a problem because my skin color changes from summer to winter considerably. So there's got to be a latitude factor in it. But the statistic they came out with was they had 100 million white samples and 1 million for everybody else.
Yeah, that's very common.
You know, it's like they got the 80-20 completely reversed.
But when you think about it, though, that makes perfect sense. That, you know, we all live in our own worlds, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, I mean, if you live in a white world, you simply don't see all those other people very much.
Yeah.
And so, for example, if you take the subway, you know, at 9 o'clock on a weekday morning, you'll really find out what diversity in Toronto means.
Yeah.
If you go for a stroll, you know, on the Mink Mile, on Bloor between, say, Yonge and Avenue Road, it's a white sort of group or population or whatever you think you were part of. And
Yeah.
so I think it's so much a function of what our experiences are that, you know, when I was in my first undergraduate degree at York University, you know, it wasn't until we got into things like third world development in economics that I actually saw fellow students who weren't white. And it was sort of weird because New York's a pretty sort of liberal place. And yet at the same time, they just weren't really, back in that day, they really weren't able to understand or address the sort of natural segmentation or the natural process of discrimination that we all exercise unthinkingly so often.
Well,
Anything that the police think that AI is going to contribute to them in the short run, it's got to be a bit of a joke. because are they illegally allowed to even use face recognition software in Canada? Because in lots of US states, it's banned. Do you know, Mike?
The data is depersonalized. So they are allowed to use it. I don't think they're doing facial recognition for the for this project. But
Right, because they can't depersonalize that. It's the essence of the process to personalize it.
Oh, for facial recognition, yeah.
Right,
But
right.
basically, the arrest records say what's the perceived race of somebody,
Right.
and was he given a caution? Was he arrested? Was he taken into custody? Did he get bail? Right? Was he
Right.
charged?
Right.
And that is what they're putting together. The problem that's showing up already is that, like me, nobody has any idea where I'm from other than it's, south of London, England. And wherever I'm associating, that's what people assume I am, whether it's Middle Eastern or Far Eastern or anywhere, I can pass Aboriginal. I just disappear into the, brownish fringes. And somebody like me goes in and gets arrested, and God knows what they're going to say my race is, right? And then I open my mouth and talk to the sergeant, and I say, "Hey, could you call, the desk sergeant over at 12 Division? He'll vouch for me." And I walk out the door, and I'm white, right? What's that doing to the statistics if I was arrested as brown and I've just been released because I'm white, right? That's the kind of problem that's going to creep in. It's
Mike, have you heard of something called privacy by design?
probably, but I wouldn't want to swear I could explain it.
It's one of our Canadian sort of inventions, I guess. It's the notion that when you're building an application, for example, or a procedure or process, that you must have privacy as one of the key requirements in the design of whatever it is, not something, as currently is the case, tacked on at the end along with accessibility. So there are these bothersome, unproductive, unprofitable add-ons, privacy, for example, or accessibility. That, so anyway, the woman who was in charge was a privacy commissioner whose name I always confuse with Kevorkian. What is her name? Kevorkian, I think it is.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, she's still around running some institute for Ryerson having to do with privacy. But anyway, she was the person who promoted and pushed this idea that there's a way to look at handling privacy in the design process that builds it in as an integrated component that then solves many of the problems which would otherwise exist trying to tack it on at the end. And so that's something that even if you just read a 100-word summary of what that privacy by design sort of concept is, it would be something that you would want to look for in any discussions with the police about any process involving AI, is that the safeguards have to come in the beginning, not the end of the process. So in other words, you have to anticipate what you may have to address before you even have an application that does anything productive. I recommend that simply because it's a really worthwhile concept, number one, to understand. And if it's anything to do with race or situations where privacy or accessibility or whatever is an issue, then this is something that's very, very relevant about it. In fact, the Americans on accessibility now pretty much as a rule recommend that privacy by design, or rather the accessibility equivalent of that, accessibility by design. But it does sound like you have an interesting exercise with the Toronto Police Force if it has to do with racism.
Well, it is considering where it came from.
Yeah.
I was down on Yorkville down in the 60s. I actually had hair back then.
Well, we're down to our last 4 people, so should we maybe call it a night?
Yeah, I'm in favor of doing that. Anybody else disagree or have anything final to contribute?
Joe, say something.
Yeah, I guess Joe's the only one who's not kind of active in this particular part of the conversation, but
Yeah.
be that as it may.
Anyway, great talking to you guys. And, you know, it's tough running a forum like this. You know, there's times like I've been in your seat, Robin, and I feel like I've talked for, you know, 89 to 90 minutes. And there's other nights when I talk maybe 9, you know, and I feel really good those days. And I really don't know how to, you know, hit 30 minutes every time. It seems to always be one way or the other. So,
Well, like so much in life, I mean, it's the practice
Yeah.
notion that
Yeah.
running something with different things you're being aware of, you have to train yourself to do, right? And so for me, getting the recording started or adding like a 15-minute check is sort of like I have to program myself, because otherwise I'll blow right by it, as I have done several times with the recording. And you have to sort of build in your own kind of prompts to remind you to do things that you think are so obvious that
yeah.
you don't bother. But anyway, I'm yapping, and so let's sign off, and we'll hopefully see
Sign
you
off, everybody. Night, Drew. Good night, Joe.
Good night,
a
everybody.
month from now. Take care, all.
Night, Robin.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.